I've chosen another piece there by Burgmüller. It's the second piece of his 25 Progressive and Easy Studies for piano, arabesque, and this is a piece that I'm going to demonstrate a few tips and tricks that can help you decide and figure out how best to play a brand new piece of music. I've put myself in the mindset of being a beginner there to choose that piece of music, and the reason I've chosen it for a few simple reasons. Firstly, because there aren't many sharps or flats in it. In terms of its key signature, it's actually in the key of A minor, which means that by default there are no sharps or flats in it, but obviously we've got a few accidentals throughout the music, but nothing that we can't cope with. It's in 2/4, there's no change of time signature throughout it. The clefs are fairly standard, you know, there's a little bit of change in the left hand. About halfway through it goes to treble clef, but that's more for ease of legibility. The notes are easy to read. I mean, it doesn't go too high or too low above the actual staff. There's not too much excessive use of ledger lines. And where we do have ledger lines, it tends to be following a pattern that ascends from a more logical place anyway, which means that rather than just putting a random note above the lines, above the staff, we actually have this situation whereby it works its way towards that note. So it makes the whole thing a lot more logical. The only thing that may put us off as a beginner would be the fact that it's supposed to be played allegro scherzando, which means obviously allegro means quickly, and scherzando means to play it in quite a fun kind of way. So it's got to be sort of upbeat, basically. And because of this having semiquavers in it, maybe the beginner might be a little bit put off by that. But this is a study piece, so it's, you know, it is designed to help to practice this sort of thing as well. One of the most effective things that you can do before you start even playing is just having a look through the music and seeing if you can actually identify anything. In particular, any similarities, any repeats. And when I say repeats, I'm not talking directly about repeat bars, you know, because they are what they are, but I'm talking about situations whereby passages of music are actually repeated again later on down the line, and these are quite often quite easy to spot. You know, all you need to do is just literally look for bits that look the same, and what you tend to find is that in a lot of classical music, repetition is quite commonplace. In this piece of music in particular, we do actually have repetition. We've got a kind of a middle section, and then it sort of resolves back to how the piece starts. If I actually play it through, what we'll notice is that there is variation on it. So the introduction or the beginning would be, and then the second time round that it happens later on in the piece, the first 4 bars are the same, but then there's a little bit of variation. So we've got, okay, so pick out things like that, and that will really help you when you get to a later section in the piece, and it will effectively put you a little bit ahead of the game. It's always worth trying to chordify a piece of music, which literally means just put chords to it. Now, luckily for this piece of music, the opening section is actually already chords, so if I just work my way through it, I'm looking at, in the left hand, an A minor triad, a very standard A minor root position triad chord. And then I'm going to change that to a D minor, and that is the second inversion. And then I'm going to go back to A minor, and then I'm going to go to a C major second inversion, and then I've actually got a G7 minus the D, so G, B, F, and then it obviously resolves back to a C, but just the first 2 notes, the C and the E. And it's good to sort of think about what chords go with which sections, because if I start to liken what chords go with which sections, it makes things stick a lot more easily. And that's true of passages whereby you've not actually got physical chords playing as well. So for example, the middle section is and thinking about what chords would go with that. So that left hand, G sharp, A, B, A, G sharp, really what we're doing is the top of an E major chord, and and then obviously we're going to this, which is another variation of the A minor chord, but obviously we've just got to run up through all the notes here like a pentascale effectively, like that. So even that has chords that we can put to it, and it's a really, really good habit to get into, just finding the chords and using them to sort of anchor, to ground the music a little bit, and it really helps it stick in the memory, in the muscle memory also, and it also helps you to logisticalize the music as well. The sooner that you can start to incorporate all the dynamics and the articulations and the tempo markings, the better. So obviously we've already established that this is allegro scherzando. We might not want to do that straight away. We might be, you know, we want to get this right from the off. So we might take it at a steadier tempo just as we get into it. But everything else we can try and start to incorporate sooner on. So it says piano at the start, so it'd be no good if I went. What I want to do is find a much more piano effect and bring that in straight away. You know, the sooner that I get used to doing this sort of thing, the better. Also, take this as your opportunity to learn things that you didn't already know. So for example, you might say, about halfway through this piece, we've got the phrase poco ral, and that means a little bit of a slow down. You might not know that. So take the opportunity to look it up. You know, we've all got access to the internet now, or if you don't want to do that, you can purchase music dictionaries and have that by your piano. We've got other examples of things here as well. We've got things like dolce is a very nice word that means to play it sweetly. And trying to incorporate all this sort of stuff into it is really, really important. Articulations are similarly important to get as soon as you can in the music, for the simple reason that they are written that way for a reason, because it's the composer's intention, and this is what we want to try and bring forward. So for example, we've got slurs and staccato dots. So what we're implying here is, let's say that first phrase in the right hand, it's these 5 notes, but there's a slur between them. So we've got to slur them, and then on the last one there's a dot, which is a staccato, which means that obviously that's bounced off a bit more. It's a much shorter note. So you know, take your time in learning phrases like this, or more's the point, learning how to play the phrases like this. You know, don't just sort of settle for. Don't settle for that kind of inconsistency. You know, really scrutinise it. Record yourself if you need to, and listen back to what you're doing, and see if that helps. Because if you can get it so that it's much closer to what is written down from an early stage in your learning process, then that will make it just so much easier for you going forward. And I think one of the most important things that we've got to remember is that we need to understand the order in which to learn things. It's very, very tempting when we're learning a piece of music to always focus on the beginning, or focus from the beginning of a piece of music, which means that you will start a piece of music and be going well, you'll mess up and you'll go, no, that was no good, so you'll start again. And you'll mess up at the same place and you'll go, no, so you'll start again. What you need to do is say, well, hang on, it's this bar. That's the bar that needs the attention. Because all that's going to happen now is the whole first introduction, the whole beginning of that piece of music is going to get really, really strong, because you keep going over it again and again and again. And you're always going to be better at that than you are at the bit that actually needs your attention. So what you need to do is isolate the problem area and work it out exactly what the problem is. And then when you feel that it's a bit more, you're a bit more comfortable with it, put it back into practice and maybe give it a bar before it, so, and after, just so that you can sort of glue it back into place, but very, very non-haphazardly. You want it to be really securely into place there. Chunk it out into sections as well for learning. So when you, at the very beginning, when you identified that there was a certain structure and certain bits of repetition, we might have identified that there was a middle section, you know, this bit. When you come onto that bit and it comes time to learn that bit, don't go from this bit, because there's no point. Just say, right, I've done that, you know, that's up to a decent standard. We'll put it all together nearer the end, you know, when we're more comfortable with the whole thing, and we'll start to glue it together a little bit, but you know, take it from there and just work through it like that, and that'll be much stronger, because that will give that the same amount of attention as you've given to all the pieces, all the sections of it prior to that as well. The more that you can memorise a piece of music that you're learning, the better. That's not to say it has to be absolutely ingrained into your memory, but it's just to say that the less that you have to focus on looking directly in front of you at the score and or looking at the keys to make sure that that's, you know, you're definitely going to hit the right notes, the better. You know, you want the freedom to also enjoy the sound that you're creating. So try and work out little tips and tricks that will help you to memorize things. I've done videos about this before, you know, memorizing pieces of music, funnily enough with another of Burgmüller's pieces from this very suite, so do check that out, but yeah, there's some tips anyway to help you choose a piece of music for your repertoire, and if you don't have anyone else to help you through it, to get started.